All right, welcome back. We're going to let the cat out of the bag finally, but the economy majorly on our minds. Of course, all of this beginning with a discussion on the sidelines of a meeting where the Minister of Finance said that this differential, forex differential, will be dealt with. And it's something that's been with us for years, the black market and the official exchange rate. Something the manufacturers say is responsible for round-tripping and has frustrated their efforts at getting in monies. People say also it's a trigger that has led to the inflation. For several years, this fine gentleman has written about things people have got controversial and other points. I go back to many of the write-ups he's done in the past and found that many of them have come to pass, and in some way, some people say whether he's been vindicated with the warnings over the years on what we're doing with the double inflation figures, as well as the forex that Nigeria was converting back to Naira before being distributed to the states. Henry Olujibi Boyo is here with us this morning. He's an economist, a policy analyst, as well as a columnist. It's a great pleasure to have him discuss with us the economy, realities and projections. Thank you very much, sir, for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure.
Compliments
Thank you very much.
of the season. Are you vindicated all these years you've been writing, or do people say like the doomsday prophet, we will shun you?
I'm taken aback by your even asking whether I'm vindicated, because it does mean that people have been listening or seeing, because I really didn't believe that anybody was listening. So it's quite reassuring that you are saying on this platform that I have been saying something of significance, and that most of the expectations, I would like to call it in gentle terms, that I have expressed on the economy have actually materialized. I don't say that with happiness. I say that with a lot of regret, because we could have done it much better. We didn't have to have gotten to this precipice. Unfortunately, and worryingly too, is that we seem to be putting on steam along the wrong direction, and I worry.
All right, Mr. Boyo, it will be time to ask for what the right direction should be. I have read your pieces, of course, your columns on one of the dailies of Vanguard, to be precise, followed all through your write-ups on the economy. One of the things that I would pick out is that you have been, very, very vocal about policies. You have been talking about the economic policies. I mean, one of the write-ups talking about you saying that the economy has been run in reverse gear.
Absolutely,
that means.
you got it.
So please break down to just really what were we supposed to do to avert what we are seeing, and how do we forge ahead?
Well, first let me explain what I mean by the economy has been in reverse gear. You are in reverse gear if you are moving away from your destination, okay? Our destination is to provide improved social welfare for as many people as possible. In popular terms, they will say we need inclusive growth. But when you observe the trend over the years, you find that rather than more Nigerians becoming socially integrated, you find that there's more dispersal of efforts. And some of the indices you can use to judge this, or probably the primary index that comes to mind for judging this, is that of inflation. I think in our homes this Christmas season, everybody may not have recognized inflation as a word, but you felt it because most of the things you wanted to do, even the quality of menu that you had planned and all that, had to be moderated or modulated in deference to how much your money can buy. The first law in governance, the first fear in governance, is that of inflation. If inflation runs out of control, the chances are nothing else will work. So it sometimes bothers me when you hear both government, senior government officials, as well as so-called experts, who will tell you that, oh, let us forget inflation, let us pursue growth. really they don't know what they are talking about, because you really can't get significant growth if inflation is going at 20%. Anybody telling you that is deceiving you. So the index of inflation, if you use that as a guide, you will find that rather than inflation trending towards best practice of say 2% in Europe and elsewhere, inflation in our case has been trending towards 20%. The implication of an inflation rate of 20% is that every 5 years, any static income becomes zero. And that should worry you if you intend to benefit from your pension contributions over the years. You will probably endure a lot of agony if that is all you are putting your hopes on, because the money that you will be paid at that time, if inflation is running at 20% and above, you will not even be able to take you to, if you can still go and collect your money. As we already even see, I mean, this again is not a projection or a prophetic statement. It's quite evident. So if you want to go in the right direction, you've got to go in the direction of, first of all, driving inflation to best practice levels of about 2% or thereabouts, because the impact of inflation knows no boundaries. Everybody, whether you are a rich man or a poor man, particularly much harder obviously on the poor man, but you have to use that as your guiding index, because then other things will fall in place. Your issues of high cost of funds are totally or primarily related or dependent on the issue of inflation. If you had, for example, you wanted to lend me 100,000 naira for the year, because you see, poor man is impoverished, you know? And you asked me to pay an interest rate of 10%, right? At the end of the year, you're expecting 110 naira, right? But if inflation is going at 20%, you'll find that when you get 110 naira, you are worse off. So inflation and cost of funds often go hand in hand. You cannot expect your cost of funds to be below your rate of inflation. It doesn't work anyway. I mean, that's basic common sense. Unfortunately, common sense isn't something that we put much premium on. So really what I'm trying to say is that we are going in the wrong direction if these critical indices, you are walking away from them rather than walking towards them. I think that's the easiest way I can define it. I can explain further if you want. Right. But basically that is
Let's stay on that, because this year 2016 has been tough. A lot of Nigerians have never experienced what they're experiencing right now. And having to describe the effects of inflation, we know that in 2016 it rose from certain to certain, I can't remember what we started with, but it gradually rose till we got to 20%.
We haven't got there yet. It's just 18
point something.
We're trending towards.
But we gradually rose. Now the question is, a lot of policies were brought out at this time to try and reduce the inflation or the effects of inflation, but nothing seemed to work. The thing just kept climbing. And even in 2017, we have a budget which they say it's a budget of recovery, and hoping that, you know, it will reduce inflation and the effects and all of that. So now you're laughing. We haven't even gotten there yet.
Big joke.
we haven't even gotten there yet. But looking at this year, what could have been done differently to bring down inflation?
There's no magic wand you can wave, but the best thing usually is to look at reality. I mean, you ask the basic question, even you've done preliminary economics or whatever. I ask you what is the cost of inflation, you will tell me too much money chasing too few goods. I mean, you know, that's the classical definition, and you won't be too far wrong. So you must say, what's going on here? Why is inflation climbing? And like you said, a lot of intervention efforts have been put in, and yet it keeps meaning that you're still walking along the wrong direction. If you have a glass that is already full of water, and somebody says the problem is the glass is not full, let's add some more, what happens? You spill it all over the place, and then you spend some time to clean up the mess. The same thing is happening here. If you have inflation already trending at 18% or thereabout, it means that fundamentally the volume of money supply in your economy is inappropriately high, okay? Because that is the structure that would be driving an inflation rate as high as 18%. So if you now decide that the best way to bring down inflation is to spend more money, you've already admitted you have a problem with too much money, and then some wise cat says, look, your problem is to spend much more money. Of course, if you do that, you're going to drive the problem much faster. And that's exactly what is happening, because you are believing or falsely or misguidedly being led to believe that the way to fight inflation in this country is to throw in so much money into the system. The intervention funds are all inflationary.
Please let me ask a follow-up question, because I don't quite understand it. Because the problem is we don't have enough money in Nigeria.
Good girl.
I mean, you know, people are groaning that the monies they have cannot even purchase what they need.
Good.
And the minister says to make the economy evolve, to make it grow, or make it more comfortable, there must be money in the pockets of the people, so salaries must be paid. So when you say putting more money worsens the situation, people need monies in their pockets to purchase goods. So how does that work?
First, I have nothing. I am concerned. I'm alarmed. Horrifying that, you know, people would work and they don't get paid. It's a concept I can't reconcile. But unfortunately, that's the way it is. But you know, the point is, inflation is your target. Okay, the cause of inflation is too much money. So if you want to attack inflation, you've got to use the instrument of money. Your concern is probably that of, where is the money? There is no money, where is the money? But I'm sure in many of your newscasts, you have happily reported the efforts that the CBN makes towards mopping up of what was it called? The
excess liquidity.
Excess liquidity. You know what that means? It means there's surplus money. So if the author, the guardian, the custodian of our monetary policy tells everyone there's too much money and I have a problem with it, that I need to borrow it back from the hands of people who have it so they don't spend it, but I'm willing to pay them interest rates as high as 15%. When you have that kind of arrangement, it is impossible for you to deny that there is a problem with surplus money. Otherwise, why would you want to do such a crazy thing? Like borrow money that you consider to be excess and take it out. Meanwhile, like you say, irreconcilably, people, particularly the real sector, are saying, where is the money? We can't even get the money at reasonable rates. Meanwhile, the central bank is busy mopping up surplus cash. So you must wonder, where is the surplus cash coming from? And why you say that the CBN is busy mopping up this excess liquidity on the one hand, and comes out with the left hand and say, I'm going to interject more funds to exacerbate the issue of a liquidity surplus. And what does that mean? Two primary things. It means that your intervention efforts will only continue to drive inflation in the first place, and the need to intervene in the manner in which you are will also continue to drive high cost of funds. So if you have the double whammy of you cannot put inflation to 2%, and you cannot also bring cost of funds down to best practice levels of, say, 4-5%, so that people don't have to go and cringe and beg for loans in order to be able to set up their businesses, then you are on the right track. Now you have changed the dynamics and you're facing the right direction rather than the wrong direction. Unfortunately, neither the 2016 budget nor, in fact, the 2017 budget was ever designed to bring down inflation. You have a situation where in 2016 they made a budget, 2015 was a budget of about 4.5 trillion naira or thereabouts. And then in the 2016 budget, you found that your sources of income were depleting. The responsible thing would be for you to cut down, okay, so that you don't get yourself into much trouble. Instead of that, we unfortunately celebrated a budget of 6.0 trillion without knowing where we were going to fund it. Ultimately, 12 months or 8 months thereafter later, we find that the budget is unimplementable. When you have been issued that it doesn't make sense when your sources of income is depleting to extend your spending, even if it is infrastructural spending, especially when the tradition of government spending in infrastructure has never brought us much comfort anyhow. If you put down this infrastructure, who is going to run it? Is it not the same civil service structure that would, so why even worry about that? Why don't you leave that to the private sector? But the private sector, unfortunately, cannot participate effectively if they have to go and borrow at 20-something% in order to do business. So you see, the whole thing goes round. It's not let's do this, let's do this. As I've had some people say, for example, with regards to the exchange rate, which also, believe it or not, is also a function of excess liquidity, because you find that the literal interpretation of excess liquidity is too much money. Right. In this particular case, too much naira. If you have too much naira in your pocket and you go to a dollar auction, okay, and somebody brings out rations of dollars to confront your billions and billions of surplus naira, what do you think the rate of the naira would be? It would crash. And that's what has been happening.
Which brings me to this point, which you're going to follow still on this line of discussion. The argument whether to devalue or not to devalue was the beginning of this entire timeline of what we're doing with the exchange rate. And eventually we did start to devalue, and it was, whether it was devaluation or not, still a matter of conjecture. But eventually we have the dollar exchange rate higher than when it was at the beginning of the year. And the Minister of Finance has asked, this is a problem, the differential between the official rate and the parallel market rate. And she said, we're going to bridge this gap. There's talk that Nigeria will have to devalue further to get any closer to that. Whether that will happen, we still do not know what method she intends to use to bridge this gap. You think this government has the muscle to bridge this gap between the parallel and the official rates?
Interesting. What should be obvious is that for almost 20 years, we have been having multiple rates. The point I was trying to make earlier is to explain why the naira would never, ever appreciate so long as you continue to have excess naira supply in place. You must recognize that if you observe that the method of determining the naira exchange rate is dubious at best. You have a situation where you have surplus naira, you admit the same agency that's supposed to be the custodian and the guardian of the naira, tells you to your face, I have too much naira problem, okay? And then the same agency that's supposed to be the papa of the naira now brings into the market meager rations of dollars to auction in a situation where there is surplus naira. An auction, if you ever went to an auction, you will find that items sold are sold to higher or highest bids. So if the guardian of the naira auctions rations of dollars in a market that it recognizes that is badly suffocated with naira, the naira's rate is predetermined. And that shouldn't surprise you that at a time that we had billions of dollars to celebrate as reserves, and the price of oil was over $120 per barrel, we didn't see any improvement in the exchange rate because of this same practice, this same market dynamics. Okay, so until you change that dynamics, you will hear a lot of sweet words like you've been hearing for 18 years, 20 years or more, and you will keep hoping against hope. But the truth is you are working walking again in the wrong direction.
This is disturbing, but let's stay on what we should be doing right, because let's also look at the government and then the reasons that they have given for where we are. I mean, the country in a recession. Earlier in the year, there was a warning, even from last year, saying the country was gradually sliding into a recession. And then we expected that actions were going to be taken to avert that. Sadly, we didn't see that happen. We have heard different, tales from even the CBN and the banter between the monetary policy and the fiscal policies, and all of it points to a direction that there has to be a harmonious effort to get the country out of where it is today with the economy. But what are your thoughts on the clear-cut policies that we should be looking ahead if you say we are still on the wrong path to the recovery and growth that we are told that the 2017 budget will bring? So what then should we be doing ahead of 2017?
With all due respect, I've been saying the same thing for 15 years, so I didn't expect that my explaining it within 5 minutes would make all the difference, because you are still asking what are the policies. I'm saying these things are the things you're doing wrong. So if you want to initiate constructive policies, you look at those things, okay? So you start from inflation and say, how do I bring down inflation? Because anybody telling you that they should increase money supply, for example, by increasing wages, even though you know the 18,000 naira minimum wage is totally meaningless at the moment, okay? But to say increase wages and pumping money, what do? You further drive up inflation. So why should you continue in that direction? That should be the thrust of your policy direction, to change the economy, okay? But if that fundamental aspect, the nucleus of the economic activities in any country is unfortunately misaligned, you will find that you will enjoy a lot of sweet words, as I've said, and you would keep hoping. For example, you will start to believe a lie, because you already believe a lie. Otherwise, you wouldn't read with confidence once a week or thereabouts. The CBN is helping the banks to manage their liquidity, but when in fact what the central bank is doing is paying up to 15% for money it doesn't need, because it thinks that there's surplus money in the economy, at a time that the real sector is saying, look, where is the money? We want it at low rates. And central bank says, no, we can't let you have the money because of the fear of inflation. So why don't you take care of inflation first, so that all the rest will follow?
All right, Mr. Boy, let me stay with you on again what we have heard the government say. The reason that the country is where it is today, of course, the obvious price of oil that has crashed from what it used to be. That also, like you rightly said, affected the external reserves, affected the foreign exchange.
I didn't say so.
No, you talked about the foreign reserve.
Yeah, I said, look, at the time that you earned more dollars, because your exchange, you are earning $160 per barrel and all this, you boasted you had $60 billion worth of reserves. And I asked you a question. What happened to your exchange rate? Okay. Because now you're saying, because the price of oil has collapsed, therefore we are in this situation. My dear, did the exchange rate become stronger when price of crude oil was $160 per barrel? Did the naira become stronger when you boasted of $60 billion? Was the naira stronger when you started selling dollars to bureau de change willfully? Was the naira stronger when you gave permission for anyone who wanted to buy shares, any Nigerian one, to access dollars and move out as quickly as possible? No. So it is the wrong expectation or the wrong model within our context to say that it is the price of crude oil going down that has brought us to this situation.
Even though it went down in reality, but you say
it went down in reality, but the point is, how far away have you been from the norm of 2% inflation rate and maybe 5% cost of funds? You have never been near that at any time. It has always been intervention, meaning that you have a failed model that is driving, you're trying to drive the economy with, and it's just not possible.
I'm sorry, I'll get you in something you talked about, wrote early on, having to deal with destroying some myths. For example, we think that this year's budget is the most expensive budget in terms of how much we can realize from the budget, whereas you think that even the previous budgets by far exceed this because of the exchange rate. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, something you talk about, the federal, state, if we can reduce government spending, it will put us in a better place. You don't necessarily think so? That
I would not dare say you should reduce government spending. A prominent professor of economics who happened to be a central bank governor at one stage in his career often blamed his inability to keep inflation at reasonably supportive rates on the fact that there was too much government spending. And unfortunately, not only him, a lot of people after him also believe in the same thing. But you do not spend more when your first problem is that of inflation. What you try to do is improve the value of the purchasing power of the money you already have. Okay, and the first step of trying to do that in our particular case is not to continue to create more money, because in spite or despite the fact that we have this eternal problem with excess liquidity that makes it impossible for us to enjoy low rates of inflation that would help us to conserve our incomes, that would make it possible also for cost of funds to come down so that the manufacturers don't have to go on their knees and beg for low interest rates, and then for the central bank to come and say, I want to be generous, I'm intervening, whereas in fact you are even worsening the problem. So the first thing you got to do is to stop the CBN from continuously mopping up excess liquidity. But then if you did that without a follow-up action, what you are going to have is that you'll have much more inflation than you even started with. But there is a solution to that. The process of auctioning the dollars in a manner that is detrimental to the exchange rate of the Naira has to be changed. The monopoly of the CBN in the, of course, all monopolies, they carry a lot of bad baggage of distortions and things like that. So inevitably, when you have also CBN's monopoly of the dollar market, you have what you have now, okay? Because you have one main source of supply of 80% of the whatever is in the market, and then you have God knows how many millions of people demanding it. And then worse still, that custodian of the local, of the domestic currency takes the unusual role of auctioning the dollars against the Naira. So unless you change those things, and it's not so difficult to change fully, all you need to do is to ensure that you remove that monopoly, and that you do by ensuring that the CBN pays the dollar-denominated revenue to the 3 tiers of government, okay, with dollar certificates, not dollar cash. So you can't pack it in the suitcase and take the first flight away and all that. The money is domiciled in the central bank. You have a certificate, go to the commercial bank and change your dollar certificate in the commercial bank, okay? If you want to buy any material machinery from abroad, you get your invoices, submit to your bank, and your bank matches it with your domiciliary account with the central bank, and it's neat and tidy. But if you did that, you'll be taking away the fat that a lot of people, a lot of seasoned experts have been enjoying for a long time, and that wouldn't make a lot of people happy. But for the majority of Nigerians, we will probably be crying freedom.
Let's stay on the budget, the structure of the 2017 budget and the funding. Now, we know some time ago, even the president wanted to borrow some money. Of course, there are lots of reactions. At this point, we have the argument to and fro about borrowing money. We have a budget we can't fund, which you even said earlier, but we need money. And knowing that we're also talking about a budget of recovery, we want to grow. Is Nigeria well positioned to grow? The budget is heavy on infrastructure, but we still can't fund it. We don't have regular power and all of that. So if we tie in where the budget is and what Nigeria needs for 2017, what do we come up with?
You see, I'm very concerned that you say we don't have enough money and we have to borrow, right? Money is, yeah, we go to borrow, yeah. But the CBN is borrowing and keeping it aside. Which other, is it a different colored money that they're mopping up that is in excess? Are you still talking, let us borrow some more? Are we? Do you understand? It wasn't, you know, the reality is that we are walking facing the wrong direction. I mean, it's clear. It's not. There's no magic. It's not a prophetic thing. It's just purely logical. The 2017 budget, the 2016 budget, they were never meant to bring down inflation or to drive the economy in any manner, because ab initio they were already predicated on a premise that you are going to spend more at a time that you had so much inflation, so much, especially when you couldn't even be sure of how you were going to raise the money. It's totally irresponsible to be talking of additional, but don't mind what they tell you about the debt ratio being, to the debt to GDP ratio is 3% or whatever. Even if it is 1%, but as a collateral, you're still having to pay maybe 35 million out of every 100 million that you earn.
Can I sneak in a point here? Some people say the biggest economies in the world, like the US for instance, and huge debt. So we shouldn't really feel that we're doing the wrong thing.
Absolutely. While Dangote can borrow $1 billion at this thing, I think the man in Ajegunle will have to go and bring his grandmother. And, so I'm not saying Nigeria is Ajegunle, but I'm just it's just a good collateral.
Ahead again of 2017, we have heard in the president's speech while presenting the budget, he talked about how we should produce what we need as a country. I guess that is looking to address the issue of the forex with the demand for importation of items. Now let's look at what has been touted as diversification, and indeed looking inwards to see that Nigeria to a large extent produces what it eats or wears, or a lot of other items that would drain on the forex. Do you think that that's a good or a positive towards economic recovery?
I take it that you asked that question as a journalist, not as a true observer of what has been happening in Nigeria for, I don't know, 20 more years or something. By that I mean that you will certainly recollect that there is hardly any administration that has come on board that has not talked of.
This is change. We don't see that this will be any different.
What's the change?
An era of change?
What's the change?
An era of change, I mean.
The words do not translate to reality. Okay? Every administration before this mounted we will diversify the economy, we will plant rice from Kaduna to this and that and that, and it usually fritters out after some time, because why? It was never built on any foundation that was sustainable. And what are these foundations that are sustainable? The feeding bottle technique. We will intervene when you are in fact making it worse, rather than rejig the structure to make the thing run itself. The same way it runs everywhere else, where you would say there are economic successes, and which are driven by these same indices. You will recall that whenever the Federal Reserve Bank in the US, which is equivalent to our own central bank here, and the Bank of England, every area of industry hang on to what they want to say, and the importance of 50 basis points change in interest rate, in the regulatory rate and things like that. But here we celebrate and extol situations where interest rates are 30% and above, okay, and inflation rate is 20% and above, and we truly want to say we want to diversify the economy. It's a joke, because those indices must drive the economy. It's not by anybody announcing either with regalia or whatever, which we have seen in the past. So I'm saying take a look back in the past. So that's why I said you are asking that question as a journalist rather than a true observer.
Excellent discussion to a close. Tell me, projections. The government says that, well, December was supposed to be the end of the recession. We haven't seen the quarter readings yet. But we look forward to hear what exactly is happening by the end of this quarter. But tell me, projections, we're projecting a recession ending by the first quarter next year. They're also talking about growth rate. They've revised for last quarter and talk about growth rate of at least 1.5, 1.7%. I'm not very accurate about that. But tell me your projections, what you think. We'll be out of recession when?
Put it this way, any team that crafted the 2015 budget, 2016 budget, knowing fully well that our sources of income were depleting and still propelled the budget size to as high as 6 trillion. That team seems to be the same one that has now propelled the current one from 6 point something, especially when there are no indications that our income streams would expand. And regrettably so, such that even if the income streams expanded such that oil for some reason sold for $100 per barrel, and the Niger Delta militants became soft, it would still be a silly expectation to expect that anything would improve. And by saying that, I cast your mind back to when you also had $160 per barrel crude oil price, $60 billion reserves, and we had plenty of dollars. Was your life impacted in any positive manner? The answer is no. So if you're now expecting for a strange reason that it will change this time, I think you are probably living in clouds.
Thank you. But that was blamed on management of resources, and we are told that this would be
well,
a more prudent administration.
Isn't it management of resources for an agency of government that is the custodian of the lifeblood of the system, the money, continue to mop up excess? I want you to understand this. This is critical. This is serious, because you see, propaganda repeated so becomes a tradition, and it has become a tradition that even if I say it, people brush it aside. It's no big deal. But this is fundamental. The agency that's supposed to drive the primary indices of any economy that's supposed to diversify, grow, expand, or be inclusive in any manner must respect these indices. You cannot say you will do this, and you take your eyes off the ball. But people believe this, and I want to think, because you're a journalist also, you want to tell people you...
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. We're speaking to Henry Olujimi Boyo, economist, columnist, as well as a policy analyst. A pleasure, sir, to have you discuss with us realities and projections in the Nigerian economy. I look forward to getting back on Lever.
You're welcome.
And following up on all of what is happening. I'm sure those of you who stayed back and watched this interview must have been well entertained, and of course, more importantly,
educated. I hope. I didn't come here to entertain.
No, of course, I said more importantly, educated and equipped for what to expect next year.
Really equipped and going back to pray. Real hard.
Pray. All right, we'll take a quick break. We come back. The rest of the show will continue.